Welcome to the Unlist. And here we are doing another video from the void, I guess, huh? So this is a video on the house of Tom Ford, which I've never done a strictly YouTube Unlist video on the house. It's a house I've been avoiding doing because I don't own a single bottle of theirs. So I feel like a lot of people are going to see a video by me of the house and go, well, he has no authority on the subject. He is complete BS, clown show, wankery because he has no Tom Ford. Most people in this online fragrance community tend to think that ownership is authority. Like if you don't buy into the brand, you don't own a significant portion of the brand, then you basically have no room to talk, right? Like anything you say about the brand can't be taken seriously. I disagree with that because what if you dislike a brand? What if you are someone who tries to evaluate and test out fragrances from a brand even if you have no interest in owning any of them, right? So it's like me doing a video about Byredo would be the same thing. I don't own a single one, but I've smelled many of them. So for those of you who care about that, who feel like someone needs to own a thing in order to speak about a thing, there's quite a few of you out there. Some of you are also content creators that have this mindset, oh, you've got to own it, you've got to live with it, you've got to have gone through half the bottle and worn it 200 times before you can have a valid opinion. If you're one of those, you can click off this video right now because you're not going to like what I have to say. But if you're someone who wants an opinion of someone who dislikes something and wants their honest take on a brand, having smelled dozens of the brand's fragrances over the years, then this is a video for you. Now, I don't hate Tom Ford, to be clear. I don't really have much hate in my heart for anything, perfume related at least, because it's perfume. I can despise the ways and means, and I can despise the tactics, the thought processes, even the people perhaps behind the brand. But I'm not going to hate the brand because at the end of the day, it's a bottle with smelly water in it. And hating that seems like an awful waste of effort and energy, right? It's just not worth it. So, bit of history. Tom Ford, who's originally from Texas, came up through the fashion scene. He was someone who liked to design a lot of casual clothes and a lot of ready-to-wear stuff. He did a lot of he liked your typical classy sort of three-piece outfits for men, that whole debonair Mad Men kind of look with the hats and the sport coats. And then for women, he liked really big plungy necklines and all kinds of racy, sexed up stuff. So it's funny because his men's stuff is very conservative and his women's stuff is very out there. So two opposite ends of the spectrum for the gender. Men get the button down structured stuff. Women get the showing as much skin as possible, which is really interesting considering that he's a gay man. So he doesn't really have much sexual interest, if you will, in making women's clothes like that. That's just the style that he likes when he designs clothes. And his racy stuff that he made for women actually got him a lot of attention. It's how he ended up getting the job at Gucci early on because Gucci was in a slump. If you've seen the Gucci movie, the assassination of the Gucci patriarch and then the fallout that caused and then the sale of the business back to the bank so the family could just get out from under it. All of that ended up with Gucci not having much of an artistic direction, so they brought on Tom Ford and, well, his very little black dress type of clothes for the women with, again, the plunging necklines and all that, and the skin is in, which was really the opposite of what Gucci was known for at the time. Obviously, Gucci was not that racy. They were colorful, yes, a bit of a caricature of themselves by that point, yes, but not really racy. But he made them racy. And then the perfumes, because we're here to talk about perfumes. We're not here to talk about fashions. So his taste in fragrance was basically similar to his taste in men's clothes. Very conservative, very old-fashioned. And a lot of the designs that Gucci would release under his creative directorship, because he did the fragrances and the ready-to-wear side, okay? He did everything. He oversaw the whole 9 yards. The couture was still handled by somebody else for a little while. He was just ready-to-wear at first, but he eventually got the couture too. But in the beginning, it was just ready-to-wear and cosmetics. He had very classic taste in fragrances, so a lot of the fragrances for both men and women, mind you, were very classical. So a lot of people tend to vaunt and worship all those early 90s through early 2000s Gucci's, because they have a very anachronistic quality to them. You know, Gucci Envy and Envy for Men were not very chic for the 90s. And then that would continue with the rebooted Gucci Pour Homme, very 70s style woody amber, and the Gucci Rush, which is a very peppery woody fragrance. And then he would get his hands on YSL, because Gucci Group and YSL connected when Yves Saint Laurent himself was in financial dire straits, and he sold the business to Gucci Group so he could cash out. And then infamously, YSL had Yves Saint Laurent continue the couture and Tom Ford take over the ready-to-wear, and they didn't, which is a shame, because Tom Ford was actually a big fan of the late Saint Laurent, but Saint Laurent did not like Tom Ford. He thought his designs were too crass, too, again, sexualized. There was no artistry to it. He thought it was just very, ironically, very gauche, which he made Rive Gauche the fragrance. So I don't know. You can find a pun in there somewhere. But point is, the mode d'emploi, if you want to use French, kind of carried over with YSL, and all the fragrances that were being released were also very traditional, very sort of old by way of new design. So it was like how we had the new Beetle and the PT Cruiser and that sort of thing, and all the retro Crosley record players in the 2000s, where it was new technology under the hood, but retro vibes. That's kind of what he was doing. And then we got stuff like New, we got stuff like Cinema, we got stuff like the Rive Gauche Pour Homme fragrances, you know, and the revitalized Rive Gauche alongside of it, and just a lot of that Tom Ford era Gucci and YSL stuff at the time was not appreciated. Was not appreciated at the time. But once L'Oreal took over the fragrance division for YSL, because Gucci Group morphed into Gucci PPR, and then Gucci PPR morphed into Kering, they began to bust out the cosmetics divisions to different brands. So they gave Gucci to Coty, and then they gave YSL to L'Oreal, and the rest is history. They trashed the catalogs, threw all the old fragrances away, discontinued everything, started everything over again, much to the chagrin of most guys who like the older fragrances. All of that stuff went bye-bye. So, thus, Tom Ford saw the writing on the wall. He was trying to make his way to the head of the snake. I guess he was trying to become president, of Gucci PPR. I don't know what his deal was, but he obviously wasn't going to get there. So him and Domenica Del Sol, I believe his name was, president at the time, the two of them walked off, left the Gucci group, and hooked up with Estee Lauder and launched the House of Tom Ford in 2005. So then the House of Tom Ford, which had financial backing from Estee Lauder at the time, he had carte blanche. He could do whatever he wanted. He was no longer getting hamstrung by anyone. So the first thing you notice right away is the debut launch of fragrances, from stuff like Black Orchid through Tom Ford for Men, and then those early exclusives that came out within 2006, 2007, A lot of them are now legendary status, like Moss Bretches and Amber Absolute and Purple Patchouli and all that stuff. Those fragrances became Godhead in time because, or Italian Cypress is another one. They all became Godhead in time because they were 70s and 80s fragrances. Again, modern technology under the hood with a retro veneer on top. So the aromachems were modern, the materials were modern, and the practices were modern, but the results were retro. They were basically doing the thing that vintage enthusiasts claim cannot be done. That you cannot make these classic style fragrances using modern materials. You have to use oak moss, you have to use civet, you have to use all of this, these old natural materials that are too expensive or restricted or whatever. But Tom Ford's like, no, watch me. And so he made a lot of these things, and a lot of them were good. Grey Vetiver was good, Noir de Noir was good. Big problem though, price. So that was kind of Tom Ford's whole thing, was he ultimately became bigger than the brands he ran. Okay, that's part of the thing, his ascendance to stardom. So not only was he a fashion designer, but he was also a music producer and a director. So he was starting to direct some films, and he's got 2 films under his belt, and he's been nominated for Academy Awards. I think he may have won, actually, an Academy Award somewhere along the line. Correct me if I'm wrong. I could be wrong on that. He may have only been nominated, but he still got in the Academy buzz. So, thing is, he was shooting to the roof. He was ascending to Valhalla or whatever. Very popular, feeling himself, I suppose. So the thing was, the Tom Ford name, even before the house was launched, the Tom Ford name was carrying a lot of brand cachet, a lot of status. So obviously, even his baseline fragrances, the non-exclusive ones, were still very expensive. Were over $100 back in the 2000s, when nothing was over $100 unless it was Creed, right? You remember those days. Creed was $150, $200. So Tom Ford, a designer, coming in with these really expensive fragrances. And then the private blends, which also bear in mind, at that time, designers didn't usually have an upper tier. Chanel and Dior didn't have privé lines yet, okay? Armani and such didn't have privé lines yet. You just had the fragrances that they made, and that was it. Whatever the price point was is what they were. But then Tom Ford introduced these level up fragrances that were smaller bottles, much more expensive. Cost per mil was actually very high on those. Okay, so 50 ml bottle of something for a couple $100. Pound for pound, Creed was actually a better deal. I know it's crazy to think that there was a point in time, a brief window, there was a point in time when Creed was actually a better value than Tom Ford. Now they're both just about terrible. They're both equally terrible, but that was a thing. And then here's what gets really, really hilarious about it too. No one saw a problem with this. And the reason no one saw a problem with this is it was Tom Ford. He was the cat of the walk man. He was a man of the hour. He could do no wrong. If he wants $300 for 50 milliliters of juice, then by gum, that's what he's going to get. And that's, you either buy it or, I'm sorry, you're too poor. Okay, these aren't made for you. These are made for the successful people. And that was kind of the beginning of where I had any investment interest in the brand began to taper off, because I understand that luxuries are for people that can afford them. Don't get me wrong, and I'm not making this a social class issue. But when you come on the scene as a new designer, relatively speaking, an upstart designer, and you want to charge these kind of prices that, you would expect more along the line of a Patou or high-end Chanel or something, or Hermes, and you're coming in and you're saying you're premium, you're top of the line, you're for the successful people in the world, and then you present very plain bottles with stickers, freaking stickers on them that are not even centered all the time, and then you're giving someone half the amount of juice for double the price. So in theory, they're paying 4 times the price per mil of anything else on the market. So a Tom Ford Private Blend 50 was double the price of anyone else's 100 mil. So any 100 mil you could buy from Chanel, Dior, anyone, any 100 mil out there, and Tom Ford's Private Blend 50 mil was double the price of it, which really made it 4 times the price. So like I said, they were really getting you. And it's just, when I smelled a lot of them, here's the thing. When I smelled a lot of them, yeah, a lot of them were very reminiscent of vintage fragrances that I am already acquainted with. You know, Italian Cypress smelled a lot like Z14. Oud Wood was its own thing that I can't really stand, you know. And there was a couple of original things. I mean, let's be honest. Tuscan Leather was pretty original when it came out, you know. Noir de Noir was pretty original. No one was really doing that back then. The chocolate truffle rose patchouli, that was kind of a new deal. And you know, Tobacco Vanille, even though I don't like it, it was still fairly original. No one had really done a tobacco fragrance quite like that. So I give them credit where credit's due. But a lot of the rest of them were just like your dad's cologne and your mom's perfume, redressed in a plain bottle with synthetic ingredients, very heavy, very front-loaded. That's the term I use a lot for Tom Ford. Very front-loaded. So you get all of this stuff up front. And then once it dries down, it's one material or 2 materials. So it's like the fragrances are composed in reverse. Instead of having a note pyramid like this, the note pyramid's inverted. It's like this. So you get all this stuff up the top that just blows your nose out. And then once you dry down, it's like 2 materials. And that front-loaded nature really kind of gives them this linearity to them. And I don't always dislike linearity, but I kind of feel like if you're paying that sort of money, you're paying that $300 for 50 mil or whatever, you should be getting something on the level of at least Guerlain. You know, Guerlain, Caron, very sophisticated, very blended. Fragrances that smell like they have effort put in. Like the perfumer sat there and spent time making it and wanted to make a statement. Not just, you know, a glass cannon, basically, where you get all this stuff blown at you, and then the very dry down is fragile. The bottom end of it's fragile. So it's all offense and no defense, right? It's just, you don't really want that. I didn't like that whole MO. And I mean, Tom Ford didn't seem to care, right? He was man of the hour making his money. I don't want to assign any moral misgivings to him and say that he was trying to rip people off. I just don't always think that maybe he was paying the most attention, you know, because he's spread everywhere. He's doing everything because he was the eye of the hurricane. So everything revolved around him. So maybe he was like, okay, this is good enough, like that. You know, I want it to smell like this. And then the perfumers do it. And then do it on a budget because they want to make money. Hand to him, he goes, okay, yeah, it smells like that. And then that's it. And then release so many fragrances because every year there were a couple more private blends coming out every year. And then every year some of the old ones were getting discontinued. So that's the other thing is if you're going to do a bunch of novelty stuff like Avon would traditionally do, come out with tons of new fragrances every year, the price point was friendly. So whenever you finish a bottle of Avon perfume, you can assume that you can't replace it. It's a safe assumption. Any given year you buy an Avon perfume, whether it's 1968, 1978, 1988, or 1998, or 2008, or whatever, you buy an Avon fragrance, once you go through the bottle, you can assume that the chances are very high that you're not going to be able to get it again. You're going to have to move on to something else. But they always have plenty of options, and they let you test everything. The Avon ladies give out little sample swatches, so you can pick a new replacement, and then it doesn't cost a whole lot of money. So you're like, okay, it's cool. I can take the risk. I can take the leap and buy this thing because it's not expensive. Seems all right. So you can do the novelty with something that's a low risk at that point. But if you're putting out new fragrances, multiple new fragrances every year, you're wanting literally 4 times per mil what anyone else is charging. And it's only 50 mil to begin with, not 100. So you're going to go through it really quickly. If it's your only fragrance, right? If it's the only bottle, if you're a casual person, you're going to blow through that in a couple months. And then you're going to shell out another $300 to replace it in record time. And then you can't even replace it because it's already discontinued. Because it's, so that whole novelty revolving door thing at that price point is madness. It's madness. But again, it's the whole rich people who don't care. Their attention span is so stretched because they're rich. So they've got all of this, whatever it is, responsibility because they're on a high-end job where they're managing hundreds of people below them. Or they're just distracted because they're rich. So they're always on this boat, at this casino, doing this thing, living this high life, whatever. Their mind is in a million different places at once because they're just stimulated. They're overstimulated, basically, right? Because the wealth allows them to be. So the last thing on their mind is replacing that bottle of purple patchouli that they bought, or the London that they bought one time, probably in Harrods or a place like Neiman's or whatever. So, and they send their own shoppers out. They don't go in the store themselves. They have personal shoppers that want to do it for them. So they're like, you know what, just, if it smells nice, I don't care. If it smells good, just buy it. I'll deal like that. Completely just not concerned. The kind of people that just do this and don't even care, that's like the ideal customer for any luxury brand, really. That they just go, I don't care. Just give me a thing. And Tom Ford can afford to release dozens and dozens of private blends. And then the signature lines, they hung around a little longer, right? There was actually a point in time where I wanted a bottle of Tom Ford for Men. But I made the mistake of trying to buy it discounted because I wasn't going to pay that retail price. No, sir. So, and I got a fake. And that's why I say in other videos, don't do Tom Ford, don't do Chanel, don't do Frederic Malle, don't do Gucci, right? On eBay, or because they're always going to be fake. And you couldn't get Tom Ford for Men from places like Fragrance Net. They didn't have it. Places like Fragrance X or Beauty Encounter, they didn't have it. So I had to go the eBay route. I had to go the gray market route. And guess what? Got a fake. So yeah, that really burned me big time. I didn't want to take any more chances. And then sure enough, the other ones I wanted were also discontinued. Because the thing is, the main fragrance lines stick around a little longer. But we're still only talking a few years. So Tom Ford for Men launched in like 2007, and then I think it got discontinued the first time in 2011, and then I believe they brought it back for a few years because people cried because they had shaving products. They had a whole line that was scented that way, and guys who were using the products wanted the replacement, so they brought it back for a little while, but it was just like edging. It was a tease, and it was gone again. And then all the prices, because obviously now it's discontinued. And then the Noir line, same thing. You know, all the Noir fragrances that I liked, Noir for Men and the Toilette de Parfum, Noir Anthracite. It just, like I said, Green Vetiver is still around. But, and then another thing they do, which is really irritating, is they put a fragrance out in that super high-end private blend line first. And a lot of people who bought Beau de Jour or Cafe Rose got stung this way. So Comes out in that $300, now it's like $400. It's ridiculous. 4 or 5. It's ridiculous. It's stupid now, but they come out in those little private blend bottles first. You buy that. Then they decide, okay, you know what? We sold a lot of these. People seem to like it. Let's put it in the main line and give it a bigger bottle and lower the price. So everyone who like bought Beau de Jour in 2019, and then literally the very next year, 2020, it was in the regular line. And you got a double-sized bottle for much less price. Now, there are a lot of people that argue that the private blend is better, that they did some cheapening of the formula, they did this, and they did that, and they're splitting hairs. But at the end of the day, I don't care. It's a little different. Who cares? Maybe the base feels a little cheaper. Who cares? The fact that you're getting like a 100 ml bottle for like $150 or $175, whatever it was 5 years ago. But if you had been the dummy who had bought the private blend, which is only 50 ml for double that price, you felt like you were just, taken for a ride. And then they've brought other ones down, like Costa Azura, they brought down to the main line. They've done a number of, this is kind of what they do now in general, is they put it out in the private blend line first, and then if it does good that first year, or maybe it takes 2 years, but then they bring it down. Oud Mineral was the same way. Oud Mineral did really well, and it came down to the main lines and got the round bottle. So I don't know, man. Never owned any of them, and that's the reason why. Because they're like Chanel trying to operate in an Avon way. So you got the Chanel level of price with the less exclusives, the Chanel level of prestige, the simple basic bottles that look kind of cheap. I'm sorry, Chanel fans, but their bottles do look kind of cheap, especially if they're the Privé blends with the paper label on the front. Like classic bottles of Egoist and classic bottles of Coco, they don't look cheap, but like all those exclusives with the little paper label and the same little Bakelite caps, I'm sorry, but that looks cheap to me. But it's the same aesthetic of the simple bottles with the plain typeface on them, and they go for extortionate prices, right? Which Chanel can do that because they've been doing that for like 100 years now, so they can do that. But Chanel also doesn't discontinue anything normally, and they keep things available, and they bank on that availability. That's part of the reason why you buy into Chanel's, because your favorite thing is always going to be there. Your favorite thing is going to, maybe it's more expensive and more exclusive and only certain stores carry it, but it's going to always be there in some, you're never going to like have to rotate in and out, but it's like that Chanel aesthetic, but that Avon level of novelty. And then just crazy price point. And the fact that all the perfumes are just basically, like I said, these linear sort of front-loaded things. They're all one-trick ponies. Like when that what was it? Lavender Extreme or whatever it was. It was basically just nuclear Caron pour un homme. So take Caron pour un homme, dial down the vanilla, dial down the tonka, and then make the lavender note nuclear. So like a nuclear dose of lavender in your Caron pour un homme. And that was selling for stupid prices. And a bunch of influencers bought it, and a bunch of the usual suspects bought it, and they're like, yeah, this is the best thing ever. This is the most vivid, realistic lavender. I'm like, bro, just go down to your local head shop, go to your local Mystic store that sells all of the clary sage and the balls that make the ringing noises and all of the spiritual stuff. Go to their essential oil section where they keep all the little essential oils, and grab yourself like a $15 bottle of lavender, pure lavender essential oil. And some of the better shops, like the one up here in Pike Place Market, like Tenzing Momo, shout out, by the way, not sponsored, but shout out. They have like different kinds. They've got a French lavender essential oil. They've got English lavender essential oil. They got more like, they've got they even got a Washington, an or Olympia, wherever they grow the lavender up here. So they have 3 different kinds of lavender essential oil, and they're all like $7-8 a tube. So people who are flipping out about how realistic the lavender was in this $475 50 ml Tom Ford fragrance that was a 1-year production anyway, and it was gone. Oh, it's so realistic. It's so worth the money. I could spend like $8 and have the same experience. And I can take that lavender essential oil and I can pour it into anything I want, into scent-free shampoo. I can make a candle with it. I can pour it into soap. And you don't need a perfumer's degree or a degree in chemistry or any of that shit to do that. Or just put it on your skin and enjoy it. You know, get into the whole oil blending thing. Several videos back, I did a video about blending oils. You can do that. Save yourself all the grief and all the money. But I don't know, man. I kind of feel like Tom Ford is just a brand for rich morons. And I know you Tom Ford fans are going to hate me for saying it, and I might lose some subscribers, whatever. But beyond a few friends of mine and a few peers of mine who really collect the brand, I'd say the vast majority of the customer base is just rich, detached, and not really bright people. You know, it's the same market for a lot of these sort of luxury brands that are really just all about flexing and showing how much you spent, and a little square bottle with a little paper label on it with some really front-loaded kind of piss poor, poorly put together, super nuclear strong, granted, but piss poor, poorly put together fragrance that sells for 1 year and then it's gone the next, and you're $500 out. I don't know, man. I don't feel like, you know, that's my opinion of the House of Tom Ford. Like I said, I'm not going to make any friends with this video, but I don't care. It is what it is, man.